Hi, I'm Victor Margiotta, and this is the Community Show. My guest tonight is John Testa. We're going to talk about family, we're going to talk about history, we're going to talk about a lot of things that are going on in this world right now. So I just want to say thanks, John, for coming on, and we're going to start. So.
Thank you for asking me. It's great to be here.
Oh, I know, this is great. You know, we couldn't go to the studio, so you know, we're lucky to have the restaurant to come to.
I'll come to the Paradise anytime. Don't worry about that. It's one of my favorite places.
Thanks. And you know, my father always loved having you here and always appreciated it.
He was a great guy, and your mom too.
Yeah.
And, had some great times here and continue to do that.
Yeah, this is, you know, it's 74 years that we've been here, and
amazing.
Talk about tradition and you know, history.
Yeah.
And it's such a wonderful thing. It's always been somewhere for people to come. You know, now we do a lot of after funeral parties because people feel so comfortable. You know? And you know, I think it's important. That sense of belonging is what is so important for
especially
community.
at these times, to have a home feel and to have a place that you feel grounded. Very, very important, especially today and what the kind of year we're having. So I'm glad you're here, and I always, like I said, my family and I, we always look forward to becoming.
Yeah, and it's always the best. And speaking of family, you're now a grandfather.
Yes, I am. It's been a year. Our granddaughter, Lacey, just turned a year in June, and that was the fastest year I've ever experienced. But it's all wonderful, and really feel blessed and lucky to have a happy, healthy granddaughter and daughter and son-in-law. Everything went great. So. Thank you.
Well, I tell you, I have 30 nieces and nephews, so I know babies,
okay.
And that's one good-looking baby.
Yes, thank you.
She's beautiful.
We think so too. Thank you.
That's awesome. You're retiring from politics.
I'm out. Yeah, I'm 22 years in office. I had retired from teaching after teaching 33 years. Retired 7 years ago, believe it or not, and now, as of January, I've been retired from politics and from elected office. So I'm a free guy with my family and anything else I need to do. And again, I feel blessed to be able to have the opportunity to do what I did for my town that I grew up in, representing Peekskill all those years. And I feel good about that, and hopefully left it in a better place for those who took over after me.
What I would like to know is what's some of the information you would like to share with people from what you've learned over the years with the politics?
Well, I always felt that I needed to get involved in some way, shape, or form. Politics was never my first choice. I never thought I would do that. I was involved with some boards, obviously involved with the schools, being a teacher, so I felt involved as it was with the community, but civically, when I became a member of, I was on the Parks and Conservation Board for a while, the Zoning Board, so I felt, involved, and then kind of evolved into running for office when I was asked to do that. It was not my thought to do that at all growing up. Never thought I would, but worked out, ran for councilman, and then mayor, and then county legislator. So just kind of flowed into each other, and that was the way that I felt I could give back to my community. And as I said before, I feel good about what I was able to do those years, and hopefully people agree. And again, making Peekskill a better place was always first in my mind, and I felt I was riding on the shoulders of ancestors who came to Peekskill from Italy, my grandparents, or great-grandparents, and settled in Peekskill the late 1800s. And they probably never ever dreamed that their great-grandson would have been in office and being the mayor of the town that they moved to. So I felt buoyed by their spirits. So that's how I felt about it.
That's a great feeling. It really is. Now, you wrote a piece about your grandfather, honoring your grandfather.
Yes, I did. When this whole pandemic started a few months back, it hit me that my grandfather was someone I should talk about, because I never got to know him. Actually, my father was only 3 years old when he died. He died in 1918 as a result of the Spanish influenza of 1918, part of the second wave, and that October. And that was always a story growing up that I heard about. So I felt that maybe it was time to honor him, which is what I did in the piece on my blog. And he worked for the post office. And just to tie in, today versus 100 years ago, he was the Italian interpreter at the post office for all the Italian immigrants who were living in Peekskill who needed help with their whatever they needed help with when they went into the post office, and he was there as the interpreter to help them. So today we have a different population, but it's the same thing. There are people who help people as they learn the new language and the new culture that they're in. So there's a good parallel there. So I felt that I should mention it, and I wrote a little piece about it, comparing the 1918 pandemic to today, and what happened to my grandfather and so forth. So yeah, I felt good doing it, and I got a lot of response from it, especially from my family. They were really happy.
It was beautiful. Yeah, it was really nice.
Thank you.
And how could people? What's the blog?
It's John G. Testa blog at WordPress. Or you can go to my website, johngtesta.com, and there's a link to it there.
Yeah.
And you can go and read about it and some of the other things that I've written about over the years there.
You constantly hear this has never happened before, this is unprecedented, and it's such a good thing that you were able to bring this up and say, yes, millions of people died.
Well, 50 million people died back then.
Yeah.
There was no hope for a vaccine because there was no such thing as a vaccine. There was no way of creating a vaccine back then. They didn't know when it was going to end, and they had nothing to look forward to. They didn't know what the future brought, as people were dying. And at the same time, it was World War I, and soldiers were dying also in the tens of thousands. So, a lot of people perished, a lot of families, including mine, obviously lost some very dear people, and it changed a lot of the atmosphere of the town back then. So as bad as it seems now, it was many, 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 many times worse back then. So we'll get through it.
Yeah, and we should learn from history.
Yes,
That's why history is so important.
Exactly.
And to say it was unprecedented is just...
It's hard to get objective views sometimes on things. So obviously you have to do a little bit your own research. I would always recommend for people, don't believe everything or the first thing you hear. Dig a little bit and be an educated person. We do it for consumer goods, do it for history too.
And that's why history is so important. So moving forward, we can learn from mistakes, and we can learn from what happened before, and we could deal with it.
That's the whole point, right? Exactly.
So what are some of the strong points, that you've really appreciated being in office the last few years?
Well, being a county legislator was a unique experience. Again, never expected to be moving up in the ranks of levels of government. To be a county legislator meant that the district, the people you represent, is enlarged. It's not just Peekskill anymore, and then it became partly most of Cortland and then splitting Yorktown. So I got to learn a lot more about our area, meet a lot of great people, make a lot of great friends outside of Peekskill, help other communities. When you're a neighboring community, everyone needs to work together because what one does affects the other, especially Cortland, Peekskill. Cortland basically surrounds Peekskill. Peekskill used to be the village of Peekskill in the town of Cortland. So everything needs to work together to make sure that everyone's lives are better. So it was a great experience to be able to do that. I learned a lot about county government, which is kind of like the forgotten level of government people don't understand. Some might even say we don't need that level of government, and I can understand that too to some degree. I'm a smaller government guy, so I can understand that philosophy. But the point is, it's there, and there's reasons that it's there to help all the communities of Westchester. So to represent the district that I did, on the shoulders again of great people before me, like Tim Carey from Cortland, and Ed Gibbs, who was a mentor of mine, and so it was a great experience.
So a big topic while you were there was Playland.
Yes.
And now is that issue resolved? Or
Well,
it's a tough thing
it's not
because
resolved. From what I've been hearing, I do keep an ear on the ground for some of the things that were big issues when I was there. It's only been 6, 7 months since I've been in office. But Playland is a unique situation because it's an amusement park. You have to understand, Playland is more than just the amusement park. There's a beach, and there's other amenities there. There's a boardwalk. When I think of Playland, I think of the amusement park and really the drain and resources that is. The county loses roughly $4 million a year. It's run by the county. So when Rob Astorino was county executive a few years ago, he felt that it was appropriate to bring a partner in from the professional world to help run it and take some of the burden off of the county taxpayer and maybe even having a better run facility. And an agreement was made. It took a while for us to get to an agreement because the county board had to also weigh in on it. We came up with what was, I think, as fair of an agreement as we could get. And then when the election happened and Mr. Astorino was no longer the county executive, a new administration came in, and they felt that they didn't want the agreement in place, something that I advised against them doing. So it's been in court basically for a year or more, and it's cost, from what I just read, they had to appropriate another $3 million for outside counsel, so it's up to like $6 or $7 million in legal fees just to get out of a contract that's really good for the county. So it's not really a political thing, it's just a philosophical thing. I don't believe in the county or government of any kind owning and running an amusement park. Just don't think it's government's job to do that. But I understand how Playland is an emotional, sentimental place for a lot of people, so it's a tough one.
Yep.
But I would rather have a private entity run it and not have the headaches of it. So it's still in court, and I don't know where it's going to go, but I only know what I read, and it's not looking good, I can tell you that. Well, luckily it's closed this year in a way because of the COVID. They decided not to open Playland amusement park. The beach is open and boardwalk is open, but the amusement park is not. So they have basically a year of reset, hopefully figure it out, so we'll see what happens.
Now, on a smaller scale, Peekskill owns the Paramount, but they lease out.
Right.
So it's kind of almost the same.
Well, the difference is Peekskill owns the building, but they don't run it. They don't run the Paramount. That's always been a separate contract with a separate entity. And so in regards to that, the city doesn't expend any money unless there's some capital things that need to be done, like air conditioning or something permanent with the building that needs to be repaired. But the lease they run the building, whoever has the lease.
And
unfortunately,
again,
that's been
closed too.
Yeah, that's been closed too. They
It's
had a little issue with the group that was running it. Things didn't go as they planned, and then some local business people tried to keep it going just to get some events in there, because the restaurants downtown rely on people visiting the Paramount is a very important anchor for the downtown. So it's in everyone's best interest that the Paramount be successful. When I was mayor, we were able to get over $1 million renovation. Luckily, we had Governor Pataki there who understood what we were trying to do. We got the funding to restore it back to its original, and it's beautiful, and everyone who goes there realizes it. But the point is, it still has to be maintained and run, and it costs money to do that. And to get acts to come there, you have to have a viable place that they can trust. So it's kind of in a limbo right now, from what I understand. So
it really has been. I mean, it's a shame what this thing is doing to businesses.
Yeah,
you know.
it's as you know, as a business owner, some people are equipped to adapt and some aren't, and it costs money to adapt. You're losing money because you don't have the business that you did, but you also are spending more money for the precautions you have to take, and the less amount of guests that you can have and so forth.
Yeah.
And some just can't overcome that. Their bottom line, as you know, can be very, very small and thin. And unfortunately, a lot of people who closed probably will not open again. Even with the stimulus money that was used to try to help, can only help for so long.
Lincoln Memorial or Lincoln
The museum?
Museum.
Well, that's where I concentrate now, talk about community involvement. To me, the Lincoln Museum, the Depot Museum, is very important for the city, for the region. We are well known throughout the region, actually internationally now. People have come to visit. And it's something near and dear to my heart, obviously. And a lot of people in town and in the area realize that we have events there. And it's the museum, but it's also the cultural center, educational center that we're trying to make it into. And it's great. And last year we were able to move into the new visitor center, which is the second building, which was a new building built out to the front. It's right next to the Homestyle Bakery. The museum is back a little bit closer to the railroad tracks. And the visitor center is going to be a second area for us to have events and to have a gift shop and to have offices and to have meetings, lectures and other things there. So we were ready to get that going this year, and then what happened. So we would have to put that off. But we are, for those who don't know, we put in our name for the location for early voting. When early voting was being geared up last year, it was in Peekskill City Hall last year, and that was just not tenable for the voters, for the City Hall, and for the Board of Elections, so they wanted a new location. So we submitted our name as a possible venue, and they came and looked, and they loved it, and we had the congressional primary early voting there last month, and we're going to have the early voting there for the presidential fall election and other elections that are taking place in November. So hopefully we'll continue in the future as being the early voting center. And it's really a perfect place for people to, there's plenty of parking. It's near the railroad tracks. It's in the middle of crossing into Cortland, and because also Cortland people vote there. So it's working out great, and it's great for us, and it's great for the community. So,
you know, Peekskill is such a beautiful town, and you know, the family values there are very good. You know, you grew up there,
right.
And again, these touchy situations that we talk about, you know, the whole rioting and all that stuff, I don't think that was going to happen to Peekskill. Especially the police are very good to the people in Peekskill.
Peekskill, you know, they had, I think in one day they had 2 or 3
Demonstrations.
demonstrations in the same day. No, not one problem.
No.
People respected each other's views, and one was in the middle of town, one was at the riverfront, one was in, maybe a week or so later in the Pew Park, which is an important park. So it's, you know, everybody has always gotten along in Peekskill, no matter where you came from.
Right.
So I was glad to see that continued. And the police in Peekskill have always tried to have a great relationship with all segments of the community. I mean, everybody has their moments, you know, there's always, you know, we're all human and there's those times, but nobody let it define the city or the police force or anybody. No. And that's what you have to be. I wish it was that way throughout the country. We'd be in a much better place.
Yeah. You wrote a piece of the history of Verplank, which was really nice. And it was funny because you mentioned just down the street from the Paradise, which I,
of course,
you know, my father would have went crazy about that. But talk a little bit about that piece.
Well, you know, my first interest in history when I was younger, living in Peekskill Military Academy was right next to my house. Actually, it's where the Jets also had their, which is a whole other thing. But so I got interested in military history as a young boy because of the academy. My father worked there. My oldest brother had been a graduate of Peekskill Military Academy. And then when I got a little older, teenager, I got involved with reenacting Revolutionary War, living history, my brother and I. And that was my initial real interest in history was Revolutionary War period. So I knew a lot about this area, and it's a very important area for the revolution and formation of our country, obviously.
Yeah.
And George Washington had an encampment here. The crossing over, the ferry was here that crossed over to on the way to New Jersey, over to Stony Point, and then onward down to New Jersey. That's how the French troops came through. That's how the British came through when they took over this area at one point. So it was the very end here of Broadway was a very, very important place for a lot of reasons. And I thought people who live here might not even know about it, so that's why I wrote they asked me at the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce asked me to write a piece for their annual book. So I did, and I wanted to make sure people understood how important it is. And there's a painting of Washington that shows the Verplanck Hills and the river behind him from the hill that he had his encampment on. And there's also a newly found, a couple years ago, I pointed out in the piece, the drawing of the whole encampment here. There's the only drawing ever known, original drawing of a Revolutionary War encampment of George Washington with his marquee tent where he would stay. And it was done by the person who was the same engineer, French engineer, who designed Washington, D.C. So, and it was like 5 or 6 pieces of paper put together, and it was more of a panorama type view, and a lot of history was learned just from that drawing of the encampment here. So very important area here. And when Major Andre was captured, the whole Benedict Arnold story that has become a little famous over the last few years with shows and movies, that happened in Tarrytown, but the 3 guys who caught him were given their medals right here in Verplanck by Washington himself. So
Awesome.
very important little pieces of information people need to know.
Yeah. I was reading something, by the way, go to johntesta.com, and he's got some great stuff on there. Now, we're a republic and not a democracy. I was reading something about that, and the whole thing is that, the electoral vote, and the
Yes.
fact that, one state should have just as much say as...
Well, back when all this was debated, back when the Constitution was put together, you have to remember what the United States was. There were cities, and it's the same way now, but even more so then. And then there was the rural areas, which took up a lot more space but had a lot less people than the city.
Yeah.
So they felt, and I think correctly, that one concentration of people should not make the decisions for everybody, which is why there is the Electoral College and, versus the popular vote type thing. So you have to make it fair, which is why Congress and the Senate, every state has 2 senators, but not necessarily Congress people. The number can change by the population, which is why this year, the year of the census, which is why everyone is very concerned about the census and people being counted, because your representation is based on your population. So that's how they balanced it, and it's been a great balance, and it's worked. And that's...
Yeah, that's great information.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for the future, besides just the museum? I know you like to take it, it's about time you were able to take it easy.
Yeah, it's only been, like I said, 7 months, almost 8 months since I've been out, and I'm still adjusting. I have to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm used to, my wife is loving every second of it, because and now I'm home every night, and I'm home all day, and we can do whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
But I'm used to being on the go every day, and I miss, being involved with, helping. But I still, believe it or not, I still get calls from people, emails from people, can you help me with this? And of course I do.
Well, that's a good thing.
Because I try to put them in contact with the right person or give them advice if they ask for it. So I feel like I'm still involved, and I think people still think of me as someone to contact, which is good, I think, and I'll be happy to help whenever I can. But I have no solid plans to do anything, more. I've been had the opportunity to go into a couple different jobs I've been offered, but I decided retired means retired right now, and so I'm adjusting, but I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. All right, I know I've asked you a couple times, so now that you're retired, when are we going to play golf?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because my whole goal this year was, all right, I'm retired now. I'm going to dig the golf clubs out. I'm going to learn how to swing again and play. And I felt, finally, because being in office, Mondays were always the busiest day. I was in meetings all day. And
that's the best day to play
that's
golf.
the best day to
because
play.
There's nobody there.
There's nobody there. All the charity events that I haven't been able to go to are on Mondays, the hospital event, the fundraisers. Oh, I'll be able to go to all these events. And then this happens, the COVID happened, so nothing is going on. So I will dig it out, and I promise you we will get out there.
Well, I'll keep bugging you.
Please do.
All right. I wound up joining this Buchanan League. I've been subbing for the last 10 years, which is fun because then I don't have the stress of winning or losing. I just go there and play. And one of the guys decided not to do it this year.
Okay.
So I went in full time, and
Good.
And now I'm feeling that stress of winning.
I was in a league for many years. I know the feeling. But the good thing about a league is it makes you play every week, so you keep up on your game, which is good.
I think we're out of time.
Okay.
So I appreciate you
I
coming
appreciate
on.
you having me on. It's always a pleasure and a lot of fun.
Yeah, so we'll get to play some golf. I'm Victor Margiotta. This is the Community Show. Thanks so much for watching. It's government and politics, and I've talked to a few people. They get all flustered and out of control, and actually, what did you do? You just got yourself all worked up for nothing. So go out and vote. If you're really that passionate, see how you can get involved with your party and do what you can.